cold out here. Turn up the thermostat. This is our main service coming in from power company. And everything will be bonded here, meaning all your neutrals and all your grounds will all hook in the same place. This is the only place on the entire electrical system you're required to do that. Everything else has to be a separate ground and a neutral out to the rest of the house. There's a few wires. And what we had to do here, this meter base used to be on the back of the house. Well, obviously they did the addition, so the back of the house is now over here, and so we did all this service and put this panel here, and then we've got breakers that'll feed the addition, and then a 100 amp breaker that'll feed the existing panel in the house. Here I've got all this number 12, which is 20 amps, and then I've got one orange wire, which is number 10, which is 30 amp, and that's going to be our dryer. All right, so I'm going to turn all these off. Whoops, I'm going to turn these two off. We're gonna take all of these off and clean all this up.
That's they had that work, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the arc fault breakers. We need 2 of those for the bedrooms. And this is all live, so we don't want to touch any of that. Had to get our attention. And at one point, these all had labels on them, but I can see that labels aren't on them anymore, so we're going to have to turn things on and off to figure out what it is so we can get the panel labeled, but that's all right. That shouldn't be too much of a challenge. And the ones that aren't labeled, it won't matter, but the ones that are labeled, I'll typically just take that label and just use that further down on the wire. That way I can keep the label and I know what it does. I'll just put it on the black wire, which is my hot wire. I just put that loop on there so I don't lose my label. And I'll do the same with all of them. Looks like neither one of these have the label on them either anymore. Oh, this one kind of does. It says something room. I'm assuming that's a bedroom. We'll have to confirm that, because if it is a bedroom, it gets an arc fault breaker, and we'll have to hook the neutral as well as the hot to the breaker. So this one is going to be a bedroom, I'm pretty sure. I'm just going to put those together so I remember that those go together. Be careful, because this is all live. You don't want to touch that. And the right tool makes all the difference in the world when you're wiring. I use Crocs. It's got this 12-2 on it that allows me to strip the wire out. You just got to be careful just when you do it. It just strips it and pulls it right out. You do it too hard and wiggle it too much, then you cut into the wire. That's what you don't want. Then you just pull the wire out. All right, this one is a 10 wire, so we won't be able to use the Crocs on this one to strip it out. So you just got to be careful. Obviously we don't need it this long, so we're going to shorten it. We can use the Crocs to cut it, to shorten it. A couple of ways you can do this. You can just take a pocket knife or a razor knife and carefully strip it. What I like to do is take my dikes. Once again, the right tools, the job makes all the difference in the world. These are angle dikes. I can just strip this back this way like this, cut it up. Little ways, and then I can just grab it, pull this up, and then I can take this ground wire and use it just to pull it. See how that splits it? You don't have to worry about cutting it. As far as the wire sticking out, you only need 1/4 of an inch, but I usually put about 1 inch or 1.5 inches in the panel coming out. That exposes all my wires. One thing I want to do is get the ones that are going to the breakers out of my way. And I want to start with all my grounds. Get all my grounds grouped together. And once again, all the neutrals and all the grounds, because you have your neutral and you got your hots and your grounds on your wires. Everything's going to hook in the neutrals and the grounds all hooked to the same bus because it's bonded at your first disconnecting means, which is where the power comes first and where your first breakers are. That's considered your first disconnecting means. Let's just get all my ground wires separated from all of my neutrals and my hots. And just remember, these are live. So if you touch, I've got gloves on, but if you touch any one of these, it's gonna shock you. This bus is hot, this bus is hot. There's nothing hot on your neutral bar and ground bars, but everything here is all live. This is two separate phases. You've got A phase and B phase. It's single phase 120 volt power. So every other one, you'll see how this comes up, misses that one, comes up, misses that one, comes up, misses this one. This one does the same thing. On this side, it comes over, misses, comes down, misses, comes down, misses, comes down. So every one of these is the opposite phase. So when you put a 2-pole breaker, it crosses them both and you get 240 volts. Typically one breaker just crosses either one of them, you have 110. But if you want 220, you put it across two of them, and that's why they're opposite phases there. But any of those will shock you. It's not going to kill you, but it'll definitely get your attention. And let's just get all these grounds where we need them. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so pick where we want to land them. And let's just make sure we got 8 of these loosened up. Just using the flat blade screwdriver. Once again, the right tool for the job makes all the difference in the world. This is a 6-inch Klein square shank. That's 4-inch, sorry, not a 6-inch. And for what we do, it's probably the best screwdriver. Most electricians use Klein tools, at least up here in Idaho and Wyoming. I'd imagine that's the same anywhere. I'm just going to loosen these 8. And then I'll start with my lowest. Take my dikes. Then I'll take my needle nose pliers. These are the tools I've learned to use over the years. I've only been doing this for 32 years, so not too terribly long. So I got a little bit of experience. And I'll just do that for these other wires. You'll see some electricians will want to make it super nice and neat and just look beautiful. Well, it's just gets expensive because it takes a lot of time. I do want it to look professional. I want to do a good job. I'm not going to spend a lot of extra time to make it look like $1 million, but it is going to look awesome and it's going to work great and it's going to be safe and professional. And I do just throw the pieces I cut off just at my feet, just so I can pick it up when I'm done. And like I say, if you want to get a garbage can and throw it in a garbage can, you can do that too. A lot of guys keep the pieces of scrap wire and turn them in for just scrap and sell them to the recycle bin places. And the code is the same. It's a national electrical code. So it's the same everywhere you go in any state in the United States, as far as the grounding and the neutrals being hooked together at your first disconnecting means. Now let's start tying in my neutrals. Not necessary to label the neutrals. Commercial jobs you might want to. Residential, it's not necessary. We know this one is the washing machine. Doesn't get an arc fault, so we can tie that neutral in. And just remember, knowing the right way to do things matters, and having the right tools matters. This one I'm not sure what it is. It could be a bedroom, so I'll hold off on that one until I know for sure. This one also I'm not sure, so I'll have to figure out what those are. This one also, I'm not sure. Figure out which one of those are the bedrooms because their labels came off. All right, this one laundry. So it doesn't get an arc fault, so it's gonna hook in to my neutral bar. We're gonna have to know what ones go to the bedroom so I can get the arc faults on. I've got these 4 circuits that aren't labeled. That's right, it'll be easy enough to determine. I'll just go in and turn it on and use my volt pin. This one is labeled, so I got this into my neutral. So the arc fault breakers, they'll trip if there's any kind of a interference between the hot and the neutral or the hot and the ground. A GFCI breaker will trip if you have any kind of interference between the hot and the ground, but not the neutral and the ground. And so the way I was explained, if you have the neutral and the ground having a challenge, electricity goes back on the ground or the neutral, either one, if there's any transient voltage. The arc fault's gonna trip and let you know that there's a problem with the neutral. A lot of times the neutral will arc if there's a loose wire nut or a loose connection on the neutral. It'll arc and it'll catch something on fire. But if you have an arc fault breaker, it'll trip when it senses that arc. And I used to think that it was a nuisance and wasn't necessary until I was doing a job in Driggs, and there was an arc fault breaker that kept tripping, and I finally traced it to a wire nut in a light fixture. And had we not found it and fixed it, it probably would have caught the house on fire. Luckily we found it and fixed it. All right, so we need to go in and determine which one of these 4 do what in the house. So this one I'm pretty confident does one of the bedrooms, and the best way for me to do that is I'm gonna hook one of these up to a breaker and just get power on it. Then I'm gonna go inside and find it. All right, so now I'm gonna turn this one on. Let's see in the house what goes on. And that's what we'll label this one. Let's go see what that turns on in the house. Yeah, so those are not on, so we know it's not that bedroom, so it must be the master bedroom. Yeah, so it's the master. I just use my volt pin, AC Electronics volt pin. This is my favorite one to use. It doesn't make any noise. It'll come on just if you touch anything, but it won't stay on. If there's power there, then it'll stay on. You know there's power. That's how come I now know that that's what that wire is. Now I'll just take a sleeve and I'm going to write on it master. And that way I'll know that one is my master, which gets the arc fault. And then I will take and slide that sleeve over that. That way I'll know that's the master. Yeah, we need to do the same with these other ones. Let's figure out what these are. Put that one on my neutral bar. Just take this one and hook into my hot on my breaker. Turn that breaker on, go back inside. Okay, so that one's not that bedroom. Let's see if it's the furnace. Oh, it is. That's the furnace. We'll get that one hooked up and back on so they can get some heat going in the house. Keep those little kitties warm. Once again, we take another little sheath here, right on that furnace. And so we don't need an arc fault on this one, so the neutral will tie into the neutral bar. I'll go ahead and tie this into my neutral bar. Let's snap one of these breakers in up here for the furnace. Leaving our label on. Alright, so that's got the power back onto the furnace. So we need to find what these other 2 are going to. The last 2, once again. Tie our neutral in. Tie our hot on. Whoop, you gotta be sure and get it in the breaker slot. I'm getting in a hurry. It's because it's cold out here. There we go. Turn that one back on. So what would this one be? Let's try this. So the power's not there. So this one, I'm not sure yet which that one is. That's the only one that won't be labeled once we find the other bedroom, which has got to be the last wire. That's why it's nice to keep the labels on. This one should be the other bedroom. the 2 bedrooms. That might have been the laundry room. The lights in the laundry room, I'm not sure though. This should be the other 2 bedrooms. I usually put 2 smaller bedrooms on 1 arc fault breaker, but you notice I use 20 amp. I don't use 14 wire. I had a situation just the other day that they were trying to plug in space heaters and they kept tripping because they're on 15 amp breakers. I don't run 15 amp breakers. I don't run number 14 wire. A lot of guys do. I don't. See, did that turn on the lights in the bedroom? Negative. That should have got the lights on in the bedroom, I would have thought. What are we missing? We determined that was a master bedroom. We determined that was the furnace. That sure should have brought on that bedroom. Might help to turn the breaker on. Might help to turn the breaker on. Well, the switch is off right now. There was light. It helps to turn the breaker on. My brain's frozen. I didn't turn the breaker on. Knucklehead. I'm a knucklehead. I'm a dunderhead, as Cole would say. All right, so that one is the other bedrooms, which is what we expected it to be. So we'll take another sheath and just write on it bed 1 and 2. Our battery went dead on our audio when we were filming this. So to catch up on what's going on here, we're tying in the neutral for one that's not on the arc fault. So we're just tightening up the neutral. This is the 2-pole breaker that we're hooking in for the dryer. That was the neutral for the dryer wire. Now see that this breaker snaps in, and then it's a 2-pole 30 amp breaker. I'll turn the breaker off. Then I'll hook up my number 10 wire onto this 30 amp breaker. This is for the dryer. The black on the top and the red on the bottom, it really doesn't matter. I just like to keep it that way, consistent and uniform. Then I'll hook these wires up into this breaker, and I'll hook up the dryer and allow the dryer wire to be live. You'll see I'm stripping this out. This is number 10, so I'll show you on my Crocs how they have different sizes of wiring. These go down to a number 10, then go up to a 16. Just use the right size. Some guys will just take linemen's and just try to strip the wires, and that might nick it just a little bit. So be sure and use the right pair of strippers for the right size of wire. I'll tie the black on the top and make sure it goes on in the bottom slots. When I tighten it, it'll tighten it and pull it in. You'll notice both of them are coming on the bottom. On the left side, I'll come in on the top for the same reason. And I'll just snug them in. Just get them snug, but you need to get them snug. Not over tight, but you at least need to get it snug so that you don't have any loose connections. You don't have any arcing that causes heat, and it'll cause, you'll notice sometimes on breakers that the wire is melted back, and that's usually due to heat because of a loose connection in a breaker. So just get it snug. Tuck your wires back in out of the way. Here are my arc fault breakers that I need to hook in. And you'll notice on this one that there's a purple button. This one's actually a combination arc fault GFCI breaker. A combination is not required, just the arc fault is all that is required. It will have a white button. Though you can use this breaker, this is what we happen to have. It was a Saturday, didn't have access to the arc faults, and so this is a combination. You'll see it's got a tail on it. This particular panel, you can just use a plug-on arc fault or a plug-on combination breaker. They didn't have those at Home Depot. We grabbed this combination with a tail, so this white tail will just hook on to the neutral bar. And you'll notice too that on the arc fault breaker, on the wiring, the hot and the neutral going out to the circuit in the bedroom will hook to the breaker. The neutral on the breaker will hook to the neutral bus, and then the neutral and the hot from the circuit will hook directly to the breaker. There's a place for the neutral and for the hot to hook onto the breaker, the neutral in the back and the hot in the front. I'm just tying in the neutral, the tail. If it was a plug-on neutral breaker, then you would just plug that neutral breaker on and it would do the same. You'll notice I'll pull it out and I'm pointing out where the neutral goes and where the hot goes. If you'll remember, I put sheathing on it, labeling it with the black and the white together, and that's because the white does not go to the neutral. The white goes to this breaker. That's the wire I have in my hand now. Right now this is a number 12, so I'll use the 12 slot on my strippers. strip it out back 3/4 of an inch. And so I'll just tie the neutral into the breaker and I'll tie the hot into the breaker. But a lot of times it's easier just to pull the breaker out. Yeah, that's what I'm doing here. Just pull the breaker out, hook the wire up to the breaker, and then stab the breaker back in. Because the neutral is clear to the back and it's not always that easily accessible. And I'll tie that neutral onto the back with my needle nose pliers, tighten that up. Got to get it in that bottom slot because as you turn the screw, the wire will tighten towards the direction that the screw is going. Now tighten it, get it snug once again, not over tight, but it's got to be snug so you don't have any arcing. And then I'll do the same with the black, hook it into the bottom on this side. If it was on the left side, like I mentioned, we'd hook it to the top. Here it'll hook to the bottom, so as it tightens, it'll pull the wire in instead of pushing it out. And then I'll line the breaker up, hooking that back in first, and then snapping it in towards the center once you get that back in. Got to get it in there just right. Once it's in just right, then it'll snap right in. Just like that. And then like I mentioned, we do have two, because we had 2 bedrooms in the house. A lot of times you'll have more than that. We actually had 3 bedrooms, but 2 of them were smaller, and I combined 2 bedrooms on one circuit. I was just pointing out that those buses are hot. It's smart to turn it off. What I didn't mention before is I'm currently feeding the sub panel, and everything in the house is currently on, and the homeowners are still living in there, and so I chose to do it live, leaving the power on inside. So that means those buses are all hot. You notice I've got gloves on and I'm being careful, but I would encourage you to turn off the power completely and just plan on doing it without power into the house while you're working on it, just to be safe, because electricity is no joke. More than likely it's not going to kill you, but it will absolutely get your attention. That's my signature flip with those needle nose pliers. You'll see that a few times. And I'm doing the same here. I'm hooking this tail up to the neutral. That tail off the breaker will go to the neutral bar. And once again, you'll get it snug because you don't want to have any loose connections. You don't want to strip it out, over tighten it, but you want to get it good and secure. And then once again, I need that other set of wires for the other bedroom. Ground's already hooked in. We did that earlier. Then I have the black and the white from the other bedroom. Strip those out. Number 12s with my Crocs once again, 3/4 of an inch. And then I'll go ahead while I have that breaker out, hook the neutral up first. It's in the back. The screws on the breakers come already tight, so we just have to back them out. Just don't back them out too far because the screws will tend to fall out of the breaker, and that gets annoying. Once again, just get it snug and secure, and then do the same on the hot. Once again, on the bottom slot, it'll slide in, so when you tighten it, it'll pull it in as you're tightening it, and then you just got to fit it in once again. Bring in the right side in first. It's got a little place where it hooks in, and then it'll just snap in place. I was just explaining that if it was a plug-on, then the plug-on would just snap onto the neutral bar, but this one's got the tail, and that one's ready to go. There was a handful more left there to install, and none of those require arc faults. So I'm just hooking it up to the hot. You'll notice I'm hooking it up on the top on this side because this is the left side, and as I tighten it, the top pulls it in. If I put it on the bottom on this side, then it would back the bottom out. Looks like I just have a few more to land, and I'm much more warmer and comfortable now sitting in my home, filling in the audio, than I was there when it was bitter cold. You'll notice that 2-inch mast coming up on the left side. That's where the power is coming in from the power company. If we would span up higher, you'd see there's a weatherhead and everything's according to code that way. Oh, looks like we have one more. This one I think was the one that was the laundry room that we did find later. It was the one that we hadn't identified when we were initially identifying ones for the bedrooms for the arc fault breakers. But we did find that it was the laundry room. And getting this last one in, then we'll be able to put the cover on. And I usually put the screws back in the holes where they were. I take the cover off, but I put the screws back in the holes. That way we don't lose the screws. Put them in my pocket, or I put them on the bottom of the panel. Sometimes they get knocked out of the panel, or I go on somewhere else, and then I'll pull them out of my pockets, and they won't get back on the job. But if I put them back in the screw holes where they came out of, that way I don't lose them. All right, so everything's in there good and secure. We are ready to put that panel cover back on. I see I need to knock out some of the knockouts, so I'll just take my needle nose pliers Make sure you don't knock out more than you need to, or you'll have open holes. So just count down how many and just take that exact amount out. There has been times where I wasn't paying attention, I knocked too many out, and I had to either put extra breakers in or put blanks there, which you can do either one. But you do have to have all your holes filled in order for it to pass inspection. What I'm gonna do next is label it. Make sure once I put the panel cover on, I don't have to take the panel cover back off to know which breakers now do what, which is also a code requirement in order for the inspector to pass it. It has to be labeled. And it has to be done in pen. You can't do it in pencil. The inspector will shoot it down if you do it in pencil. Just do it in pen, just make it legible. Some people use permanent marker. I don't like to use permanent marker. I just can't write very small with permanent marker, but pen usually works real well. Make sure that they're all labeled correctly. I've got sheaths on every one of them, so I now know which one does which. And once I put the panel cover on, then we shouldn't have to pull the panel cover off again. The inspector may take the panel cover off just to give it a visual, just to make sure everything's connected correctly. And you'll want him to do that because he has caught mistakes I've made. I know I've been doing this for 32 years, but I'm not afraid to admit I'm not perfect. I make mistakes like everybody else, but I make them far less than I used to back when I was a first-year apprentice a few years ago. Alright, now I'm going to pull the screws out. I didn't lose them because I just put them right back where they were. I'm just going to take them both out. Then I'll be able to put the panel cover on. Once that's done, you'll notice in the bottom of the electrical panel there is something white hanging. We'll talk about what that is once we get that in. There's a slot where that fits in just right. Once it fits in just right, then it's going to fit in there nicely. You don't have to force it or jam it. It just fits right in. Put your screws back in. Close it up, then your panel is done. Now on the bottom of the panel, there's what's called an inter-system bonding connection. That's for the telephone, cable company, anyone that needs to access a grounding point. They can do it through that inter-system bonding there on the bottom. I'm pointing that out now. That way they don't have to get into the panel and try to get into your grounding bar. You can just pull that white cover off and a couple of screws. You'll just screw right there to the siding. Put that white cover back on and you're done. And then the phone company or whoever else needs to do that can do that. It's just loose now because the siding wasn't on it when we had installed it initially. There's a place where you'll run a number 6 from there, just a number 6 bare copper from there up into the ground bar, which we have already done. Close up the panel, and that's done. And we are finished.